Liverpool and the Last Hurrah. The Liverpool album was released in October, and within a week of the release, we would perform a couple of tracks on the tube. That would mean heading back to rehearsal and learning how to play the songs again. The music had changed considerably since we'd returned from Holland, and there was a lot of technology required to recreate them live. Due to the problems we had experienced with sequencers on our last tour, we switched over to tapes. We had only previously used the sequencer on 3 or 4 tracks, but the new songs were covered in keyboards and we couldn't trust the performance of the bulk of our new album to the temperamental equipment. We used 2 Tascam 38 8-track machines and had 2 of them running in sync. If one dropped out, then it would just require a flick of a switch to cross to the other one. These days you could run the whole lot from a laptop without it breaking sweat, but the technology back then was just not reliable enough. We had started rehearsing with the same crew as last time, and that meant hooking up again with Mondo and Quay. We performed Luna Bay and Rage Hard on the tube, and it came across well. We spent most of December rehearsing and introducing the new songs into our set. We also needed to lift individual tracks from the studio multitracks to construct our backing tapes. Let me make something clear here. When people hear the word backing tapes, they instantly assume that the whole performance is on tape and the band are prancing about like performance seals for the public. The sound of the live performance was very important, especially in light of the "they can't play" allegations that had come our way. We could have got a stereo backing track for each of the tunes and done with that, but we wanted the 6 individual parts that made up the backing track separated so our sound guy could have complete control over it. We were going to be playing in venues of all shapes and sizes, and a composite backing track might sound different in every single one. We wanted to be able to get the best possible balance in every single venue. Why go to the bother of hauling a huge PA out on the road if you're not going to put the best audio through it? To be honest, it was a pain in the arse having to use them because they dictated everything. Tempo, song length, dynamic, and there was no chance to break away from it. This meant a lot more work for Holly because he had to make sure he came in at the right point, because if he went off, we couldn't follow him. His limited time spent in rehearsal meant there was always a danger of him coming in at the wrong place. If you look at the video of us playing Luna Bay on the tube, you can see him looking over to Mark in the intro waiting for his cue to come in. We had a new stage set for the tour. Ped was perched about 10 feet in the air on a platform that protruded from a huge red fist. The sides of the stage and the backdrop were made up from a fluorescent aluminium matrix that looked like something from the movie Tron. There were over 800 lights in the moving truss above, and we had introduced a load more pyrotechnics. Before we went away, we'd need to deal with the promotion of Watching the Wildlife that would be released while we were on tour. Warriors of the Wasteland had been promoted with an animated video and had failed to impress. It entered the charts at 24, jumped to 19, and then disappeared down over the next 6 weeks. Ironically, the band at the top of the charts at that time was Berlin with Take My Breath Away, and they would be supporting us on the forthcoming tour. We filmed the video for Watching the Wildlife in a small warehouse off the Old Kent Road. This was no big budget affair, and another indication that the end was nigh. We were on a stage surrounded by waters with flamethrowers shooting up around us. Animals were superimposed on the water in post-production. I thought it was pretty good and it wasn't very taxing in terms of effort from us, so that was a bonus. The tour had been booked, but we'd swapped agents. During a chance meeting at a restaurant in Soho, Tony Pope bumped into Barry Dickens of ITB. He knew we were touring and asked Tony what sort of deals we were getting via our agent's Fair Warning. Barry said he could get much better percentages even if we were booked into the same venues. We knew this was the last tour and we needed to cash in, so we switched. It was a good decision by Tony that had the best interests of the band at the core, but a decision that triggered litigation from Fair Warning and would land us in court within the year. Claire and I spent our first Christmas in London and invited our parents down to celebrate it with us. It was good to spend a couple of days with the family and recharge the batteries. From early January, we'd be heading out on tour for almost 8 weeks, and we'd need all our collective energy. The relationship between Holly and the rest of us was strained but workable. The early part of the tour was in the UK, and we were travelling together on a bus, but I don't remember Holly being with us, and there may have been a few times when he travelled with someone else. It suited us. Holly was not the same person as he was before our rise to fame. He wanted to be with Wolfgang rather than us, and although we wouldn't have minded him being on the bus with us, Wolfgang was a source of constant irritation. Okay, he was now virtually acting as Holly's manager, and that was bound to cause conflict because he was only acting in Holly's interest. It seems strange to me that Holly would want him as his manager. Not wishing to disrespect Wolfgang, but as far as I was aware, his only previous management experience was running a cafe. I would have thought there was a world of difference between managing an international singing star and knowing how many rashes you'd need for the week, especially if you had zero experience in the field. He'd been chipping in with his 2 bobs worth whenever the opportunity arose. It wasn't a major problem, but you had to resist the urge to ask what the fuck it had to do with him every time he piped up. Our definition of fun would be probably opposite to Holly's, but he didn't appear to be having any. I can't even remember seeing him laugh and having a good time. He was always very serious. The Holly I had met years before had left the building. The outrageous, funny, quick-witted young man had turned into someone who looked like a flamboyant, well-dressed geography teacher in the constant company of his older manservant. Maybe he just looked pissed off because he was with us. The tour began in Manchester, and that meant a repeat of the hassle over ticketing for all our relations in nearby Liverpool. It was at the GMX Arena, so at least we'd have more tickets to distribute. We would travel to London the following day for 2 shows at Wembley Arena. The shows were not sold out, and between Tony and Barry Dickens, they'd organised some free advertising from Capital Radio. The deal was as follows. Capital Radio would trail adverts for free in exchange for a recording of one of the 2 shows. It seemed pretty reasonable to us, especially when Barry Dickens explained that we had the right to block the show from being aired if we weren't happy with the performance. It was a no-lose situation as far as I could see. We played the first night, and we have all travelled down to the venue under our own steam, as we're all living in London and pretty close to the venue. It was snowing, and Ped had driven to the show in his new black Ferrari. Lovely car, but wouldn't start when it was time to go home. Jack the lad, stuck in Wembley, fans shouting to him across the car park as he's waiting for the AA. Whilst we're waiting to go on stage for the second show the following night, I casually say to Tony, "Hey Tosh, weren't Capital supposed to be recording one of these shows?" "They did it last night. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want any of you to worry about it." A good decision in my opinion. We were there to perform for fans that had paid good money and came out in awful weather to see this show. They were our priority and deserved our undivided attention. Knowing we were being taped may have diminished our performance. Our concentration could have been divided between entertaining a crowd and trying to deliver an exact replica of the record. We didn't really need to worry about the show being recorded because we thought we sounded fucking awesome. The band was rocking and we didn't mind who heard it. When I say the band, I mean everyone but Holly. I don't know whether he had thought he'd done a bad show or he was taking umbrage at Tony for allowing his performance to be recorded without his knowledge. "What recording of what show?" said Holly. Tony starts to explain the Capital deal, but Holly doesn't want the explanation. "Who the fuck do you think you are? You have no right to do that without my knowledge." In my opinion, he was overreacting, and his verbal attack on Tony was very over the top. There was no need for the volume of his voice either, especially as the dressing room was full of other people. Mark reacted first to defend Tony, and he was told to fuck off as well, and there was a brief scuffle in the corridor with a bit of pushing and shoving, but no punches thrown. We were in the corridor because we were walking to the stage and were due on shortly. Holly walks away, still shouting over his shoulder, and as he's walking along, Mark toe punts him up the arse. As foot connects with arse, there is a roar from inside the arena. The house lights have just gone down and Planet Claire is playing and announcing our imminent appearance. We have less than 4 minutes to be on stage. Before every gig we had the ritual of putting all our hands together and giving it the 1, 2, 3 cheer before we went out. This tradition went back to the very early gigs. It didn't happen before that gig and it would never happen again. The adrenaline of that incident meant the gig was supercharged. It was a great show. The lid had come off the pot after simmering for the best part of a year. And whilst we didn't know what the immediate outcome of that would be, we were buzzing and took the buzz onto the stage. There was hardly any interaction between Holly and the rest of the band, but it didn't make any noticeable difference. We stormed it. The storm was only just beginning though. What was going to happen in the morning? I had a feeling that it wasn't going to blow over and be forgotten. This was big. This could be the beginning of the end. Before the leftover beer from the after-show party had gone flat, Tony had received a list of demands from Holly outlining the conditions he wanted in place before he would agree to carry on with the tour. He wanted a separate dressing room and separate travel arrangements. He didn't want Mark O'Toole within 50 feet of him, apart from the time spent on stage. Okay, fair enough. Let both sides be professional and get on with the job. In hindsight, I think the effect of the professional agreement meant we could enjoy the tour. Although nobody was saying it, all of us must have been contemplating in the back of our minds that this could be the last go on the merry-go-round, and that the end of this tour could be the end of the band. The foundations of Frankie House had been crumbling with no repair. It was only a matter of time before the house fell down. Throughout the previous year, we'd lived under the shadow of knowing the house was looking like it was going to fall down, but not actually knowing when it would happen. The kick up the arse put the dynamite in the basement, and the house would come down in the spring. There was a definite relief knowing our collective fates were sorted. We knew the fairground was closing, so we were going to rinse that last ride. Next stop, our first visit to Belfast. Let the party begin.